Dead meme.
Guys, today I'd like to talk to you about Empyrion Galactic Survival. The topic at hand is whether or not you should spend the $16 American roughly in order to play this game, or maybe should you download it again because it's in your library and take a look because it may have been a few years. So I'm basically going to go through presentation, gameplay, and a few other issues such as bugs. So we'll begin the discussion of presentation, and as you can see, in space, things look pretty good. The ship looks nice, the planet looks pretty cool, but we'll begin our approach to the planet, and this is kind of where you'll start to see what I consider the inconsistencies in this game for the quality of graphics. Like, it's really quite jarring in some cases how much work went into, say, making these planets look good in these ships and these consoles and decals, but when you actually get in close or experience some of the game mechanics, it's like, wow, that's rather jarring. So let's load in on this planet here, and it'll probably be the first best example. Like, as you can see, the upside, there's no loading screens beyond the very first one. That's actually really cool. That is an enormous plus sign. But as you can see, as we enter, the graphic consistency is not fantastic. Like, granted, for performance sake, you definitely typically need to dumb some stuff down. Alright, so we're off the ship, and like the foliage and stuff looks okay. And like the textures on the rocks, like that looks pretty good. Like they've done a nice job in a lot of spaces, but in some other spaces they just didn't get that much love, and hopefully I'll find like maybe a monster, and that'll be a good example. Alright, so here's an excellent example of janky looking models and animation. Like, I don't know about you, but that does not look like what I would consider complete. So let's see if we can find maybe one or two more. Here's the turrets of the game. They look okay, but nothing special. And what's really funny is, while we're on this topic, is how incredibly lethal these guys are. Typically, when you get touched by one of these, the number of horrible status ailments you get, it's absurd. And it's really kind of frustrating to survive being shot by a laser gun and not have an open wound and like a broken bone and 50 other status ailments. There we go, dermal parasite. So, it's not the end of the world, but that is going to basically drain my health, my stamina, and things like that for quite an extended period of time. Alright, so we're pulling up on some POIs, basically. It's an abbreviation for point of interest. And this is kind of like I wouldn't say it's an enemy structure, but it's more of like a mini dungeon or a dangerous environment you can explore for loot. And there's some stuff that my guns are trying to blast, but that's not what we're talking about here. There are POIs as well that are settlements that are friendly, and you can come here and do some trading. So let's drop out and take a look. Alright, so we've jumped out of the ship, and as you can see, like, many of the designs of these ships are made from the Steam Workshop, so there are some valuable artists in the community that do a lot of great work. And like the foliage and whatnot looks cool, and you approach the space station, and yeah, this is more of a ground station. And it looks nice, right? Like, this looks relatively decent. Like, this elevator's a little janky and weird. But as we could see, the animations for these characters, they just don't quite jive as nicely to, say, the backgrounds and world they're inhabiting. Like, these, like, they're not overly inspired. Like, they're alien looking, and they look cool. More work could have been done. Like, the only reason I'm really pointing this out is because they're calling the game released incomplete. And I just don't feel that that word is accurate. But at the same time, it's a $20 game. So yes, the alien plants look kind of cool. This looks really neat and alien and weird. And then you have like this orange plant, which kind of just looks sad next to these cool looking alien plants, like this weird looking eggplant thing, and how neat this looks. So again, it's inconsistency. It's not that the job wasn't done or it's not functional. It's just that they're not, the world doesn't totally jive together, and it feels like partway through, maybe they ran out of budget or time. I don't know what really happened. All right, so I believe we've covered the issues with presentation. It's that it's not consistent, right? So let's talk about the next thing, gameplay. Like, what do you spend your time doing? Like, in reality, you don't spend that much time in these settlements, so you may not be that concerned. The lack of interaction with the NPCs that you do encounter, it's kind of disappointing. The world feels a little empty. Like, it's like Minecraft, when they added the villages and the villagers. They're there, but they don't do anything. They're just like they're like these dead husks, and there's nothing to them. So one thing to keep in mind, the majority of this game is you're mining up resources to essentially build these ships, and you're mostly hitting F2, and you're just dumping resources into this little box here in order to produce the next ship you would like to build. And you know, that's not bad. It's nice that there's like a system that allows you to implement what was done in the Steam Workshop easily into your game, right, without too much hassle. But the majority of the game is you, with a drill, whether it's on a ship or in your hand, you're just kind of running around shooting rocks. Because as we'll get to, combat in this game is rather hit or miss. Because like I've played a little bit of Reforged Eden, and they have improved the experience by quite a bit. But I find you're going to spend hours and hours building up this really cool ship, and it's got missiles and artillery turrets, and you think, great, I'm going to go and deal with those pirates who've been harassing me in my sector, and then they blow you out of the sky in one hit, even though you have all these shields and artillery turrets, and it's like, what just happened? So the gameplay loop in that respect is not overly, it's not desirable. I have played this game for hours, just spawning in like little People's Enterprise remakes and just flying them around the galaxy in God mode, blowing things up. So like there is fun to be had. It's just knowing whether or not your ship is strong enough to interact in the game. It's impossible to tell. So I've described ship-to-ship combat as also being hit or miss, but I'd also like to show you the number of medications in basic like anti-parasitics, anti-radiation, and all these other medications. And you think, oh, that's kind of great, right? You want to be able to heal these illnesses, but there's another complaint that stems from the system. Like, I have fought the Xerax, which are the primary antagonists of the game, been shot, you know, and I just throw on a bandage and heal up. But, you know, I go into a POI, I get touched by a spider, and all of a sudden I need to get some anti-parasite pills and some sort of antibiotic injection, and I'm bleeding to death. And it's really, really all over the place. Like, you get touched by a spider, and you're bleeding to death, dying, and you're poisoned, or you get shot by a dude with a modern assault rifle, no big deal. You just bandage up. So that sort of inconsistency in difficulty, it's very, very annoying when you're exploring a POI and you get touched by one thing and you're almost totally dead because of status ailments, and it requires you to carry around a whole bunch of medication in order to counter this. And you know, it wouldn't be terrible if it wasn't so common. Like, that's the thing, right? It's like you run around in the anomalous space station and you're being attacked by 50 different kinds of bugs, and one of them manages to touch you. It's a death sentence unless you're carrying 50 different kinds of medication. And while that's not consistent to when I'm getting shot by laser turrets in the same factory, and it's not a big deal. I lose 10 health and no big deal. We just move on with our day. All right, so this is primarily a sandbox game. So I didn't build this station. I built it in the factory, which is awesome. I do enjoy having access to creators and artists who are just better at me than this sort of deal, right? Like, I'm just not super artistically inclined. I typically can figure out little systems and how they might work. So you can build a base all by yourself. You don't need to use the workshop items, and if you've got the talent and the time and whatnot, I think you'll really enjoy it if you're one of those builders in Minecraft. This is definitely something you should consider on that route. But there is one aspect that is related to building that I feel is more of a time sink or a method to stretch out the gameplay to a level it's unnecessary. It's just to kind of inflate the time you spend playing the game. So let's call up the factory, for example, here. So all of my production times are set to 1 second because we're recording right now, and I want to be able to spawn something in if I need to in order to illustrate what we're talking about. But if we talk about stations here, this station takes an enormous amount of resources to make, but I can drop them in the factory, and that's awesome. But it takes 11 hours to make in the normal, within like real life time. Like if you don't alter your game, 11 hours. Like why does it need to take so long? Like I've already collected 16,000 titanium rods in order to build this thing. Like I think enough time has been spent. And as well, if we look at the tech tree, like basically you unlock things. I think I'm pretty sure 25 is the maximum level. Like I've been 25 for like 3 days now. It doesn't seem to be going up. So you need to gain levels in order to unlock things. So rather than just getting the material, say if we make a comparison to Minecraft, I don't need to level up my character to make a diamond pickaxe, but for some reason I need to make, I need to get to level 25 to say make this pulse laser or this drill laser, and it feels arbitrary and just kind of put in there to either stretch the gameplay, or they were unable to come up with another method in order to create a progression system. So like I'm not saying that it's lazy or that it's bad, it's just not like it's arbitrary, right? And if you're not into that sort of thing, if you just don't want to run around the surface of the planet picking up plants and shooting spiders to level up, then you know that it's a downside. But for me, don't really care. I accept that the system is the way it is. I'm gonna go run around and touch alien hot dogs and get XP so I can build lasers somehow, right? Like it just depends on you. And of course, this being a survival game, what survival game worth its salt does not have a farming system in it? And this is all right. I think this is probably one of their more well-developed systems. Like this plant's a little, these plants are a little goofy looking compared to, say, how much more alien and weird some of these other things look, which are really quite good for the setting. And of course, there's perish times, as you can see there, so that will go bad and turn into rotted food. So you need to, you know, refrigerate your food. That's cool, like they're hitting the survival aspects. There's O2 stations in which to refill the oxygen in your suit and things like that. And there's radiation protection and various hazards. The only real issue that I have is how savage some of these hazards can be. Like if you want to build your own custom space base, it is so cold in space without having a very high level EVA equipment, it'll be impossible for you to do, and thus you're probably going to use the factory to build all of your space-based facilities, and you're going to be sitting around waiting. So there's this weird loop of harvesting and then waiting for constructors to build parts that take like 20 minutes to make for some reason. Like, here's a great example. This little small atomic matrix, like, this thing takes forever to make. There's like a million little components that go into it, and then it takes, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes to make on its own. And it's kind of like, well, I feel like the gameplay is being stretched in order to attempt to fill time. So I think we've covered the gameplay. There are a lot of bugs that I've seen discussed on the forums, and I need to be honest with you, I can't recreate most of them. I tried in order to cause some of them to review the game correctly, or to give you an idea correctly of what the bugs were like. There's only one bug I've encountered that I've been able to reproduce. So at this point, I think I should kind of give you my verdict or my final bit of advice. And I know I've probably sound relatively negative on this game. Like, I want to say it again, I do like this game. Like, I'm playing it again 3 years later, out of early access to what state it's in now. So what I would like to say are the final comments is that if you're in a game for presentation, this is not for you. If you're in a game for consistent gameplay with a difficulty curve that is more reliable, or that is maybe even if you're looking for like a Dark Soul experience where you make a mistake and you are dead and you lose all your stuff, you might like it. When it comes to the amount of stuff to do in the game, it's rather limited. So if you're expecting an entire world filled with tons of things to do, I'm going to let you know a secret. The galaxy feels pretty empty. There's a few little things to explore and salvage and poke around in, but it does not take long before you're done. As well, there are a few bugs in the game that I'm seeing on the forums. I've only been able to reproduce one. I think most of them are covered. So what it really boils down to is, do you like sandbox games? Do you like survival games? How much do you like these games? And you're likely not living in Canada, so there's a very high probability you're getting this game for less than $20. If any of those things that you really like enough that you can tolerate a few things that aren't as polished or consistent, you'll probably like this game. It is fun to play it in creative mode and spawn in these big ships and fly around the galaxy and just try to blow up the aliens you encounter. Just for that alone, I think it's worth the $16 that you would spend in American. But just keep that in mind. Like, I made a video recently where I said I thought the game was still in early access. Well, if you really take a critical look at the game, yeah, it looks like an early access game. But I was wrong. It's released. But other than that, hopefully this is enough information to help you know whether or not you want to spend the money on this game, or just download it again and give it a shot. And of course, games like this have a cult following, so what I'm about to ask next probably is going to go very poorly. If you found this helpful, if you can throw a like or a sub at it, or throw in a comment and tell me that I'm a loser and I just trashed your favorite game, or you could tell me what's going well or what's going right in a constructive fashion, that would be awesome. See you guys all again real soon.